Gary has his hand up. Gary, would you like to unmute yourself,
Sure.
please?
Yes, regarding the talk, well, a little bit more than the talk, talking about mindfulness, practicing every day. However, I'm a little bit intrigued by the fact that when I visit certain temples in Thailand, I feel this concentration. It's not a feeling that I get normally at home. I just wonder how it's possible.
Right.
Oh, and some people in the past have said something like, yeah, it's a strong place. But no one ever really agrees with the same explanation.
Right.
Which means no one knows the truth.
Well, they know part of the truth. So I can try to explain it. I can try to explain it from how it seems to me. Okay. So in a good practice monastery, all of the residents will be keeping a very high ethical standard. The Vinya, the monk's rules. And that has an energy to it, or rather an absence of other energies. So and Lord Buddha talks about different types of generosity, the giving of things, but then he talks about a higher practice of generosity is when one gives the freedom from fear, abhaya dana. And he explains that people who keep strict ethical precepts are giving freedom of fear to those around them. You know that they're not going to speak harshly to you. You know that they're not going to be violent with you. You know they're not going to steal your things, etc. And so there's that, and it also accumulates over time. Like I established a monastery literally from cornfields, and so I have been able to experience over the period of 11 years. Even for myself, if I go out to the hardware store, as abbots sometimes do, and I come back and I get out of the car, I can feel the calmness of the monastery envelop my mind and body after being out of the monastery. And so energies accumulate in places. Like I would assume that if you went to a place which was the site of a vicious murder, or if you went to the Auschwitz or somewhere like that where terrible things had happened, you're going to feel a heavy kind of unpleasant, frightening, unnerving energies or feelings. But similarly, if you go somewhere where people are consistently ethical, and then they're not just ethical, that's the foundation for their meditation practice. They should be radiating loving kindness to the other members of the community several times a day. And then there's also the fact that the lay people are coming and practicing generosity. So there's all these different good things happening. It's what people are doing, wholesome and positive, and what people are restraining themselves from doing, skillful, unskillful, and negative. And then there's the other factor, which I think is some people may have suspicions or doubts about these things, I myself don't, is that the good attracts the good. So Buddhist devas who want to rejoice in the practice of Buddhists are going to come and rejoice. And there are different levels of parallel realms, as it were. And so there are the earthbound devas, and there's the tree devas. And then there's other devas that might visit specifically to rejoice at periods of time, such as when the chanting's occurring, when the Dharma talk's occurring, when the monks are meditating. And so that's a kind of a synergy thing. You have good lay people coming and being generous. You have monks keeping high ethical standards. And then you have devas coming and rejoicing, and also some of them moving in, I would suspect. So when I came here, there weren't any trees. Now we have 25,000 trees. And I would just take it as a given that a whole bunch of tree devas have moved in and that those devas are also meditating. So you're coming into a space which is a kind of a haven for people who want to cultivate sila, samadhi, and panya. And seen and unseen beings do it. And so those energies and I think if you make a shrine room in your house and you do your chanting and your meditation, I would also assume that good energy will build up there. So if you're in the computer room, for example, or the living room, kind of frenetic or restless energy, but there's this space that you use specifically for practice, and you go, when you walk into that room, you probably will feel there's a difference there. And this is one of the benefits of designating a specific space for practice, is that that can speed up the process of the mind finding some calm. If the space where you're in is calm. I hope that answers your curiosity to some degree.
Thanks, it's a very nice answer. And one of the things I wondered about, if it was actually in the walls or the pillars, but that doesn't matter.
I think it does build up and literally does absorb into things. I do think so. Yeah.
What I did notice was, by being fortunate to feel that, it almost increases your faith, which leads to daily meditation.
Yes. And I do recommend that to people who come and speak to me when their practice slips, to come back to a place where others are doing it and do it with them for a period of time and get your inspiration back, get your energy back, and try to join the evening chanting in a place where it's nice. To join group sittings for a while and then go back and do it again by yourself. If we slip off the rails, get ourselves back on the rails. It's easier with the Kalyana Mitta group support.
Achan, can I ask a question, please? In my own practice, I have a very regular morning sitting, which I find is very consistent and very good for me. But I also find that, the ability to generate sort of moments in the day seems to be quite helpful as well. Could you say something about that and how we might develop triggers? What kinds of things might point us immediately to, some kind of bit of a quiet or some sort of aha, something that's happening?
Yeah. I may not be the best person to answer that, in as much as, because I do so much meditation, for myself, when I walk from A to B, I can usually be mindful of the feelings at the bottom of my feet. And if I'm sitting listening to someone else talk, I'm kind of automatically aware of an in-breath and an out-breath. So because I have two morning sessions, an afternoon session, 2 evening sessions, that's how I've trained my mind, so that I can have those in my body, present in the moment experiences fairly easily. But for people who have a busy work life or busy family life, that's one has to experiment and find ways. I guess it's to ask yourself, how can I do it? And there also depends partly on character type. Like Yom Jintana, who she does 108 itipisos, 2 rounds of 180 itipisos a day throughout her 10 hours of working. Because she has to work so much and engage with so much, when she goes to the bathroom, she's like, when she's in the car, and she tries to do 108 itipisos, 2 rounds of that per day. That works for her. But obviously there's a faith type proclivity and a energy parami, right? This is someone who applies energy to things. Anybody who works 10 hours a day, 6 days a week is it's got some energy there. But it's like other people, it's like, what can you do? I often find that prayer beads are very helpful. Like when I give Dhamma talks or answer questions, I'm rolling the beads through my fingers. It just helps me to be a little bit more in the body and to not allow the energy to scatter outward too much. I think setting the intention after the session, like I do put a lot of emphasis on regular sits. I think if possible, a person can do 2 sessions a day, it will do better and will get better results. But outside of that, one also has to set the intention that one will be mindful through all postures. And setting that intention is powerful and important. And I sometimes forget to say it because for me it's kind of so obvious that, yeah, of course one carries on the clarity that one gets from one's meditation into one's life. Of course that's what one does. But for people who've had busy lives, it might not be so obvious. It's a dive straight into a really sophisticated or complex work task. It's much more challenged, right? I get to live with monks on a forest on a hill. So it's a different context. Yeah, how do you do it, Mike? How do you have moments or periods through the day where you are more present?
I find that I think it might be a function of my age and the fact that, you know, I live in such a quiet place, but I find things like getting into the car or getting out of the car, standing up or sitting down, like things that are, you know, big changes in my physical movement.
Yeah.
You know, I try to devote at least a moment or two. I mean, sometimes I'll sit in the car and just like wait and just have a couple of breaths before I push the start button. That, you know, that kind of interval.
Yeah, so that's skillful, isn't it? Like one can make that kind of aspiration. Okay, every time I walk through a door, every time I sit in the car, I will take a few moments to collect my mind. It's probably something that most people would have to set the aspiration to do it and then see the benefit of doing it. That's something I think that you know, lay people can give each other advice about what they found helpful.
Another thing that I found really very wonderful when I was living in Bangkok was getting on mass transit like the BTS or the underground, and just looking around the car and seeing all these other people and consciously thinking every one of these people has a mother and a father. They're all going somewhere. They all, you know, have this, they all have that, you know, and I find it really transforms my experience of traveling in the city.
So that's more of a metta kind of a thing of recognizing shared humanity or shared experience.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
As an antidote to road rage.
Thank you, Ajahn. Molly has a question. Molly, please.
Yes, Ajahn suggested at least 2 sessions per day. How many minutes should the meditation be? The minimum minutes? Do you have any advice?
It does depend. I would say, obviously, if you have a lot of spare time, I would like you to make it as spacious as long as possible. And but for people who are more busy, I would say half an hour is a good minimum. But I would say 40 minutes is better. A half an hour twice is probably better than 1 hour once. And it's just that, like, a lot of people don't realize this because there's a sense of just be mindful. But when we are just being mindful, we are actually, mindfulness is a condition that helps the mind realize the unconditioned. It's something that we have to give rise to. So if we want good, clear mindfulness. And so if we do it twice a day, you know, so often people have the experience, if you do it in the morning and then you get really busy by mid-afternoon, that you can feel that the mind has become fuzzy and more reactive. So it's like if one has a busy life, if one can take 20 minutes in the afternoon to pull back, establish a sense of clarity, a sense of having a center, a sense of balance, then that's going to be very helpful. And then again, before sleeping. But I would say half an hour as a minimum, 40 minutes is more optimal. Depends how busy you are. And an hour twice a day if possible. And many people have the experiences, it takes about 20 minutes for the mind to settle. And then if you're only doing it for half an hour, you're giving yourself about 5 or 6 minutes of peacefulness before you start to think about what you're going to do after the meditation. So it's like 20 minutes to become peaceful, and then if you can, to stay peaceful, centered, clear, present for 15 or so minutes, that would be helpful. Cultivating a very palpable sense of clarity and presence of mind. Bring that into your daily life. It'll be more resilient. And probably first thing in the morning and the mid-afternoon is the best times, if it's possible. And then another session before sleep, if you can, if you're not too tired.
Thank you, Ajahn.
when it's like, very like intense emotions or intense thoughts, and you notice that it's unwholesome, it's not beneficial to dwell upon it, what would be your advice for how to get through it?
Yeah, so I think a little bit of wise reflection is helpful. And this is where we have to have several meditation practices. And so we have our breath meditation, we have recollection of the Buddha, so we have faith in the Buddha's enlightenment, and then we have faith in our ability. There's a close correlation between those two, that you have faith that a human being actually became enlightened and has that ability. Sangha Nusati, similarly, I also have that ability. I want to cultivate that. I want to realize that. But then the other one is the death meditation, important one. One of the things that one can ask oneself is, okay, well, if I was going to die today for sure, would I hang on to this? If I did hang on to this as I'm dying, where will my likely rebirth be? It's not just death meditation, it's rebirth, not just Marananusati, rebirth Nusati. If I die with an angry or unwholesome mindset or holding a grudge or feeling some resentment, is that likely to lead to a human birth, or am I more likely to be born as a barking dog or it's like, seriously, one asks oneself that question. And sometimes forgiveness is a process. Sometimes we can't, if something really hurt our feelings, sometimes we can't just forgive by telling ourselves, you should forgive, you're a Buddhist. Sometimes it's a process, and you say, I will forgive you. And then, but you also say, I'm not going to think about this during my meditation. I'll pick this up later. Sometimes you have to negotiate with it. Another thing I've done, this requires a bit more mindfulness, but something I've done, if I'm particularly upset about something and I notice it keeps recurring in my meditation, I'll start actually counting it. And then I'm like 10. And halfway through the day it comes back, yeah, but he said, and he really, and people should keep their agreements, and I'm at 11. And when I found that to be quite helpful, because by the 100th time I can say to myself, yes, it's a very good thought, it's a wonderful opinion, you're probably even right, and you know what, you've thought it 100 times now. So maybe you can put it down. Maybe it's time to put it down, having thought it 100 times, having been right 100 times. Okay, put it down.
Thank you so much.
Sorry. I'm still sticking with the time. So I thought somebody said 75 minutes, and I think that's so rigid, and I felt so good to start with little time, and maybe sometimes in between, like, yeah, you have just the time in the metro and you just be mindful for a moment. And yeah, I think, is it that not to be so rigid with myself? I have to do it now, or because it's I can say, yes, it's better to do it now when I'm in bed, and in the morning I don't want to do it. It's okay for me to say, yes, now you do it, but the feeling, oh, you sit down for so much time, it's not my thing. What's about the time?
Yeah, so I guess it depends how much you want from your practice, right? So if you want, so what I heard you say in your question is, I don't like that, I don't want this, can't I do this, and it's so there's a lot of self-view functioning there. It's like,
Okay,
I'm going to practice the way I want to, according to my preferences and opinions, and I don't want to experience discomfort. Okay, but what I would say to you is that's only the very beginning stages of practice. And something that Ajahn Chah, which is fine, I'm not even judging you for that, but I'm just giving you my professional opinion. It's like, which you can take on or not take on. But Luang Por Chah once said, if you are still practicing according to your preferences, you have not yet begun to practice.
okay.
So if one is going to take the advice of an Arahant seriously, I do, then that's an interesting thing to consider. Because what possibly it's the case that you've not yet had experience in your meditation of what it's like when the feeling of being a self with preferences isn't even in the picture, and there's just radiance or pure peace or just spaciousness and a sense of having put all of that down, this person with all these preferences. For me, it's such a relief. It's like, oh God, he's finally shut up. The I don't want to, I do want to, I like this, I don't want to. When I get a break from him, it's like, oh God, thank God. Well, not God, thank the Dhamma. that thank the Dharma that he shut up, and I got this sense of space from it. So when one does put more effort into it more consistently, one can see preferences as preferences, opinions as opinions, feelings as feelings. And one gets something much more powerful and much more rewarding and much more cool and spacious and blissful even to rest in while observing all of those things. But one has to put quite a bit of effort into doing that. But in terms of giving some practical advice, what I think it's good, because like I said at the very beginning of the talk, I don't want to come across as scolding and say what people should do. I'm just giving, my professional opinion as someone who's been meditating for 27 years. What would be better probably is if you actually see the benefits. So suppose you do a 5-minute practice, then make it 10.
Mm-hmm.
And then just notice after the 10 minutes, not just during the meditation, because often it's a bit like we're holding a magnifying glass, but just notice when you get up, having sat longer, is there more ease in the body? Is there more calm? Is there more of a sense of centeredness? And also, is there less identification with thoughts and feelings and opinions? Is there a bit more spaciousness in the mind, a bit more porousness, less reactivity? And if we begin to see the benefits of it, okay, can you make 10, 15? And because potentially the benefits are enormous, I think it's worth at least experimenting with. Okay, I will do 15 minutes twice a day for a month and see if that changes my practice, see if that changes the way I experience myself in the world. And then if you really notice, hey, these 15 minutes twice a day do bring some genuine benefits, then one can extrapolate and understand, okay, so probably 40 minutes, there might be greater benefits. And the other things that you have insights into, they're valid. When you're on the metro and you have some time, of course, take the time to practice, take the time to be present. But one doesn't just do it during the formal sessions. One also finds other moments to cultivate sharper mindfulness and enjoy that throughout the day. But take it on to the degree that you can now, and have a paradigm of gently but firmly increasing over time. Just to see, does it bring benefits?
Thank you, Ajahn. So Ajahn, on behalf of the whole group, once again, Anumodana, Sadhu, thank you so much for this. It's delightful.
Good to spend time with you. Wishing you all success in your practice and good health, safety. Shall we, particularly if any of you have a particular health issue, we dedicate merit and share it with you. Hope that you have good health, long life.